Welcome to another deep dive. Looks like someone's been hitting the books hard. You've given us quite a collection of Nobel lectures this time.
It's certainly an eclectic mix, isn't it?
We've got excerpts from over 30 lectures. They span everything from magnetism and molecules to economic theories and antimatter.
I have to say, your reading list suggests you're a very curious person.
Let's dive in.
Sounds good.
So, where do we even begin with a collection like this?
How about we start with something fundamental?
Okay.
Let's jump into NBL348.pdf, which is J.H. Van Vleck's Nobel lecture on magnetism. He talks about early attempts to understand magnetism using classical physics, and get this, their calculations predicted no magnetism at all.
No magnetism. That seems counterintuitive. How could they have missed the mark so badly?
Well, classical physics, with its focus on continuous phenomena, just couldn't grasp the quantized nature of magnetism at the atomic level.
So it was a case of the model they were using being inadequate to explain what they were observing.
Precise.
What a classic example of how scientific progress often involves a paradigm shift.
Exactly.
So to understand magnetism, you needed to shift from a classical to a quantum way of thinking.
Yes, and this shift wasn't just limited to physics. It rippled through chemistry, materials science, and even economics.
Speaking of economics, let's jump to NBL350.pdf, Paul Samuelson's lecture. He mentions this intriguing idea from Schumpeter about the human brain evolving in response to economic problems.
Oh, yes, that's a fascinating one. Schumpeter argued that our capacity for reason and rational decision-making wasn't just some abstract development. It was shaped by the very real need to navigate a world of scarcity and competition. Survival of the fittest applied to economics.
So instead of economics being just a study of human behavior, it becomes intertwined with our biological evolution.
Exactly. It challenges the traditional boundaries we often place between the scientific disciplines.
It's almost like saying that economic problems were a driving force behind human intelligence itself.
You could interpret it that way, yeah.
Wow. It's incredible how these early ideas continue to inform our understanding of even the most complex human behaviors. Okay, let's shift gears and dive into the world of chemistry. Frederick Soddy's lecture, NBL351.pdf, talks about the discovery of chemically inseparable radio elements, the foundation for the concept of isotopes, right?
Right.
So before Soddy's research, the assumption was that all atoms of an element were identical.
That's right.
So what exactly did Soddy find that changed that understanding?
Well, Soddy found pairs of radio elements like ionium and thorium.
Oh,
They had the same chemical properties, so they reacted the same way in chemical reactions, but they differed in their atomic weight.
Interesting.
And their radioactive behavior was also different. This led to the realization that you could have atoms of the same element with different numbers of neutrons, hence the concept of isotopes.
So it's like finding out their different flavors of the same element.
Yeah.
And this obviously had huge implications for our understanding of the periodic table.
Absolutely. It was a revolution in chemistry, opening up new avenues of research. For example, scientists started using radioactive isotopes as tracers to track chemical reactions and study all sorts of biological processes.
It's amazing how one discovery can cascade into so many others. Okay, let's move on to NBL352.pdf. Richard Sigmundy's lecture on colloids. He starts by saying that even our ancestors were familiar with colloids. Think milk curdling or blood clotting.
Ah, yes. It's a great reminder that science is all around us, even in the most everyday experiences.
It is.
Zygmundy took that everyday fascination with colloids, these mixtures with tiny particles dispersed throughout, to a whole new level.
And it was his work with stained glass, specifically gold orpiment glass, that sparked his interest, wasn't it? He was fascinated by how those tiny gold particles give the glass its beautiful color.
It just goes to show inspiration can come from the most unexpected places.
I love that.
Zygmundy's fascination with colloids ultimately led him to develop the ultramicroscope. This revolutionary tool allowed scientists to observe these tiny particles for the very first time.
Wow. A whole new world of structures and behaviors revealed.
And it's all thanks to beautifully colored glass. And this knowledge has paved the way for advancements in fields like nanotechnology and material science.
From stained glass to nanotechnology, it's incredible. Okay, let's delve into the molecular world with Walter Norman Hayworth's lecture, NBL354.pdf. He focuses on carbohydrates, and he has this really interesting way of describing their structure.
Oh, yes. Hayworth compares the structure of carbohydrates to building with Lego blocks. He envisioned the various sugar units, think glucose, fructose, as individual blocks. You
Right.
can link them together in countless ways to build more complex structures.
Like disaccharides and polysaccharides.
Exactly. So instead of being intimidated by those complex formulas, you can just imagine snapping together different sugar Legos.
I love that analogy. It makes organic chemistry so much more approachable.
But Hayward's work wasn't just about making science fun. Understanding the structure of carbohydrates was crucial for all sorts of things,
Like what?
like understanding how plants store energy or even the structural integrity of cells.
Fascinating. Now, for something completely different, Carl D. Anderson's lecture, NBL356.pdf, he talks about the discovery of the positron, the antiparticle of the electron.
Anderson's work was a pivotal moment in particle physics. He actually captured a photograph.
A photograph of a positron.
Yeah, it showed a particle with a positive charge traversing a lead. That was the smoking gun, proving the positron's existence.
Wow. So he basically took a picture of antimatter.
Pretty much. This discovery confirmed a prediction made by Paul Dirac's theory of quantum mechanics. It further solidified the theory's validity and opened up a whole new realm in particle physics. The positron, with its positive charge but the same mass as an electron, really threw a wrench in the works in a good way.
And I remember reading that positrons are now used in medical imaging techniques like PET scans, right?
You're absolutely right. The discovery of the positron had far-reaching consequences, blurring the lines between theoretical physics and practical applications. It also led to this fascinating concept of electron-positron annihilation, where when these particles meet, they convert their mass into energy.
So antimatter meeting matter results in pure energy.
That's the gist of it, and that process is fundamental to our understanding of how energy is balanced in the universe.
Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing. Let's move on to NBL357.pdf. This is Otto Heinrich Warburg's lecture, and it focuses on cellular respiration.
Warburg's work was instrumental in understanding how cells convert nutrients into usable energy.
He talks about using specialized light sources to study the ferment spectrum, right?
Yes.
He identified substances like prussic acid and carbon monoxide that could actually inhibit respiration by interfering with certain enzymes.
And those enzymes, they were the ones containing iron. His research was revolutionary for its time. It really illuminated those fundamental processes that drive life at the cellular level.
And it paved the way for decades of research in biochemistry and cell biology.
It definitely did.
Okay, on to NBL358.pdf. Louis F. Leloir's lecture takes us into the world of sugar nucleotides. And he starts by admitting his early experiments with them were confusing.
I find that comforting.
Me too.
Even Nobel laureates have those moments of scientific head-scratching.
Exactly. That makes them seem more human.
Definitely. But you know what? Leloir's perseverance really paid off. He and his team eventually isolated sugar nucleotides and figured out their crucial role.
What's their role?
They're essential for the biosynthesis of complex carbohydrates and glycoproteins. That's a fancy way of saying they help cells build and modify these essential molecules.
That's a pretty big deal. It seems like so many scientific breakthroughs come from those initial moments of confusion and uncertainty.
You've got a point.
Now let's shed some light on Nikolai Gennadieff-Basov's lecture, NBL362.pdf, which focuses on something I'm sure we've all used: lasers, more specifically semiconductor lasers.
Basov's work was absolutely pivotal in the development of lasers.
He delves into this concept of states with negative temperature. Can you explain what that even means?
Well, imagine electrons in a semiconductor getting excited to higher energy levels than normal.
Okay.
Then, when these excited electrons return to their ground state, poof, they emit light. And that's basically the principle behind laser emission.
Ah, so you create this population of excited electrons, and when they drop back down, they release light.
Yes. And unlike other light sources, laser emission has a super narrow frequency band, making it incredibly precise and powerful.
So it's almost like you're creating a beam of pure light energy.
You got it.
And this precision has been a game changer for so many fields.
Absolutely. From telecommunications to medicine and even manufacturing, Basov's work is a perfect example of how a seemingly abstract physics concept can have far-reaching practical applications.
Speaking of fundamental discoveries with fun backstories, let's jump into NBL366.pdf, Sheldon Lee Glashow's lecture. He shares this anecdote about a fellow physicist, Bert Richter, who claimed to have discovered that the electron is a hadron.
Oh, that's a good one.
Imagine that.
It's a good reminder that even the most brilliant minds can misinterpret experimental results sometimes, especially when you're dealing with the complexities of particle physics.
Well, thankfully, Glashow and his colleagues set the record straight, right?
Yeah.
Their work on the charm quark helped to reconcile those confusing experimental observations with the theoretical framework of quantum chromodynamics.
Right.
That's the theory that describes the strong force, one of four fundamental forces of nature.
Yes, and predicting the charm quark was a huge win for the standard model of particle physics. You know, that model that describes all the fundamental forces and particles in the universe.
It's always nice when the theory matches what we see in experiments.
It definitely helps build confidence in our understanding of the universe. Okay, let's shift gears again and delve into George J. Stigler's work on the economics of information, NBL 368.pdf. This one really challenges some traditional assumptions in
It
economics.
definitely does. Stigler argued that information, unlike what many economic models assume, isn't readily and freely available to everyone. It's actually a scarce resource, and getting your hands on it can be costly.
Yes, it costs time, effort, and sometimes even money to acquire and process information.
Stigler even mentions that some of his early research proposals on this topic, even though people like them, weren't immediately embraced by mainstream economic theory.
It highlights how groundbreaking ideas can sometimes take a while to gain traction.
Well, in this case, the idea caught on pretty quickly. He says that within 15 years, the field of information economics just exploded.
That's right. It even got its own dedicated classification in the Index of Economic Articles. Clearly, Stigler tapped into something important.
He definitely left his mark. Okay, back to physics with Steven Weinberg's lecture, NBL 370.pdf. He describes this aha moment he had regarding neutral current processes, something that seemed to contradict the prevailing theory of weak interactions at the time.
Weinberg's insight was brilliant. He realized that these neutral current processes, while they seemed to be absent, were probably happening all along.
They were just happening at such a low rate they were undetectable.
Exactly. That was a key step towards the development of the electroweak theory, the theory that unifies the weak and electromagnetic forces.
Amazing. And he also discusses quantum chromodynamics, or QCD for short, which describes the strong force that binds quarks together to form protons and neutrons.
Right.
It's incredible how these fundamental forces, once complete mysteries, were gradually unraveled through scientific inquiry.
I agree.
Now, how about we explore the world of ion movement with Lars Onsager's lecture, NBL 371.pdf.
Onsager was a brilliant mind. His work covered a wide range of topics, from statistical mechanics to thermodynamics and electrolytes. In this lecture, he really gets into the nitty-gritty of how ions move in solutions.
He talks about something called the relaxation effect, where an ion's movement is influenced by all the other ions surrounding it.
It's like trying to navigate a crowded room where everyone's constantly bumping into each other.
Exactly.
Onsager went beyond the limitations of earlier theories to develop a much more accurate picture of ion transport. And he highlighted the importance of the principle of least dissipation in understanding these movements.
Which basically means that natural processes tend to occur in a way that minimizes energy loss.
That's the gist of it. It's remarkable how a simple principle like that can apply to such diverse phenomena.
Okay, let's jump into the world of molecular genetics with Werner Arber's lecture, NBL 372.pdf. He's talking about his work on restriction enzymes, those molecular scissors that bacteria use to cut DNA at specific sites.
Arber's discovery was revolutionary. These enzymes, which act like a bacterial immune system by chopping up foreign DNA, became essential tools for manipulating and analyzing genetic material.
He mentions an experiment where he showed that the more viruses were present, the more likely they were to successfully transfer genetic material.
Yes. He showed that the number of viral particles capable of transferring a specific gene, he called them transductants, was proportional to the square of what's called the multiplicity of infection.
Essentially, the more viruses you have, the greater the chance of genetic transfer.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a beautiful example of using quantitative analysis to understand a really complex biological process.
Absolutely. Okay, on to Brian David Josephson's lecture, NBL 373.pdf, a deep dive into superconductivity.
Josephson was a young prodigy at the time, and he made this remarkable prediction about the behavior of supercurrents.
Supercurrents.
Those are electrical currents that flow with zero resistance, but only in certain materials and only at extremely low temperatures.
Okay, so what was his prediction?
He predicted that Cooper pairs, those bound pairs of electrons that carry supercurrents, could tunnel through an insulating barrier.
Oh wait, electrons can tunnel through barriers.
They can. It's a quantum mechanics thing.
It seems counterintuitive.
It is. In fact, Josephson himself initially doubted it was possible. But his prediction, based on those quantum principles, was quickly confirmed experimentally. The Josephson effect, as it's now called, showed the wave-like nature of supercurrents.
And it opened up a whole new field of research.
It did.
Didn't this discovery lead to the development of those incredibly sensitive squeakies?
You're right.
Superconducting quantum interference devices. They're used for all sorts of things.
Like measuring tiny magnetic fields in the brain, and even detecting gravitational waves.
Now that's impressive. Okay, how about a change of pace?
A
Let's
lot.
explore human physiology with André Frederick Cornan's lecture, NBL 374.pdf. It discusses the limitations of the Fick principle, a method used to measure pulmonary blood flow.
The Fick principle is a fundamental concept in physiology. It basically relates blood flow to the uptake or release of a substance by an organ.
So you measure the difference in concentration of that substance between the blood entering and leaving the organ.
That's right.
So what did Cornan find?
Well, he found that applying the Fick principle to measure blood flow through the lungs wasn't as straightforward as originally thought. There were certain limitations.
Interesting.
He and his team had to use a combination of different techniques to get an accurate measurement.
And what did they discover?
They found that the way blood flow is regulated in the lungs is more complex than previously thought, especially in situations where oxygen levels are low.
Okay, ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at NBL 376.pdf, where Vincent Duvigneau takes us on a journey through his research on sulfur. He was particularly interested in its role in hormones like insulin and oxytocin.
Duvigneau's work had a huge impact on our understanding of how these biologically active molecules are made and how they function. His research showed just how important sulfur is in building these essential compounds.
And he started this research journey by being fascinated with the sulfur content of insulin, right?
Right.
And this led to his groundbreaking synthesis of oxytocin.
Exactly. Oxytocin is the hormone that plays a key role in childbirth and lactation. His synthesis of this hormone in the lab was a huge milestone in biochemistry.
It's a turning point. It demonstrated that scientists could create even complex hormones from scratch, paving the way for countless future advancements.
It did. And, his work with insulin and oxytocin even led to the development of several new chemical reactions, expanding the toolkit for chemists everywhere.
Okay, let's jump into NBL 377.pdf with Odd Hassel. He's exploring the world of donor-acceptor complexes.
Hassel's work was all about using X-ray crystallography, that technique that allows us to see the three-dimensional structures of molecules to study these unique complexes where one molecule donates electrons to another.
So it's like they're engaging in a delicate molecular dance, exchanging electrons.
It's a great way to visualize it. And Hassel's work really deepened our understanding of chemical bonding and the forces that drive those interactions between molecules.
It's amazing how seemingly abstract concepts can have such wide-ranging practical applications. Okay, let's explore Louis de Broglie's lecture NBL 378.pdf, where he talks about the wave nature of the electron. This was a pretty revolutionary idea, right?
It definitely was. De Broglie challenged the classic view of electrons being solely particles. He proposed they could also behave like waves.
He points out that back in the early 20th century, physics was divided into two seemingly separate camps: the physics of matter, based on particles, and the physics of radiation, based on waves.
Yes.
De Broglie basically bridged those two worlds.
Exactly. His concept of matter waves was met with some skepticism at first.
I bet.
But you know what? It was soon confirmed by experiments. It revolutionized our understanding of how atoms are structured and was a foundational pillar of quantum mechanics.
It's incredible how such a seemingly simple idea can lead to such profound shifts in our understanding of the universe. Okay, let's move on to Herbert Spencer Gasser's lecture, NBL 379.pdf. This one focuses on the intricate world of mammalian nerve fibers.
Gasser was a pioneer in understanding how our nervous system transmits signals throughout our body.
He classified nerve fibers based on their conduction velocity.
Yes, how quickly those signals travel.
And their sensitivity to substances like cocaine and asphyxia.
Amazing. These seemingly simple tests revealed a lot about those microscopic structures and how they differ in their functions.
Okay, on to Jeffrey Wilkinson's lecture, NBL 380.pdf. He explores the world of organometallic chemistry.
This is where the worlds of metals and organic molecules collide.
Exactly. Wilkinson's work helped us understand how metals can bond with these carbon-containing organic molecules.
Creating all sorts of unique compounds with really interesting properties.
And he focused on stabilizing alkyl groups, chains of carbon atoms in these compounds, right?
Yes. Alkyl groups were notoriously unstable.
But Wilkinson figured out how to tame them using specific ligands.
Ligands are molecules that can bind to a metal center.
Right.
By carefully selecting the right ligands, he could essentially control the behavior of those alkyl groups.
Brilliant. And his discoveries led to the development of new catalysts, those substances that speed up chemical reactions.
Yes, catalysts are essential in countless industrial processes. Wilkinson's work has impacted fields ranging from pharmaceuticals to energy production.
It's a fantastic example of the power of synthetic chemistry. Okay, let's switch gears once again and delve into Philip Showalter Hensch's lecture, NBL 381.pdf, which discusses using cortisone and ACTH, that's adrenocorticotropic hormone, to treat various conditions.
This is a story of medical breakthroughs. Hensch's work led to new treatments for debilitating diseases like rheumatoid arthritis.
And it all started with his observations about the effects of jaundice and pregnancy on rheumatoid arthritis patients, right? He noticed that sometimes these seemingly unrelated conditions could lead to remission of their symptoms.
Talk about thinking outside the box.
It's a reminder to always pay attention to those unexpected observations. You never know where they might lead.
I agree. Hensch's research ultimately pinpointed cortisone, a hormone produced by the adrenal glands, as a potent anti-inflammatory agent.
And this revolutionized the treatment of rheumatic diseases and countless other conditions.
It certainly did. But Hensch was also very aware of the potential side effects of cortisone and ACTH. He was a strong advocate for carefully weighing the benefits and risks of any treatment, especially powerful ones like these.
It's a reminder that even life-saving medications can have downsides.
It's always about finding the right balance.
Okay, let's dive into NBL 382.pdf, where Alexei A. Abrikosov explores type 2 superconductors and the vortex lattice. This is getting into some pretty advanced physics.
It is. Abrikosov built upon our understanding of superconductivity. He was particularly fascinated by type 2 superconductors, materials that maintain their superconductivity even when exposed to strong magnetic fields.
And that's pretty unusual, right?
It is. Most superconductors lose their superconducting properties when exposed to even weak magnetic fields, but type 2 superconductors are different.
So what did Abrikosov discover about these special materials?
He predicted the existence of the vortex lattice, a regular arrangement of magnetic flux lines that penetrate the superconductor.
A lattice of magnetic flux.
Yes, and these flux lines are quantized, meaning they can only exist in discrete units.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is, but it's also incredibly beautiful when you think about it. Abrikosov's work has had a huge impact on the development of high-field magnets and other technological applications that rely on superconductivity.
It's fascinating how something as abstract as a vortex lattice can have such concrete implications. Okay, let's take a look at NBL 383.pdf, Paul Herman Miller's work on DDT. This is a story of both scientific triumph and unintended consequences.
It definitely is. Miller's discovery that DDT was a potent insecticide was initially hailed as a major breakthrough in public health.
I remember reading that DDT was instrumental in controlling disease-carrying insects like mosquitoes and lice. It saved countless lives.
It did, but over time, concerns grew about the long-term effects of DDT on wildlife and the environment.
And that eventually led to its ban in many countries.
That's right. Miller's story highlights the importance of carefully considering the potential unintended consequences of any scientific discovery, especially when it involves introducing new chemicals into the environment.
It's a sobering reminder that even with the best intentions, we don't always fully grasp the long-term impact of our actions. Now let's explore the human mind with NBL 385.pdf, Daniel Kahneman's lecture on heuristics and biases in decision-making.
This is where psychology meets economics.
Exactly. Kahneman's work challenged the traditional economic view of humans as perfectly rational decision-makers.
He showed that we're often swayed by mental shortcuts and systematic errors in our thinking.
He describes framing effects, where the way a problem is presented influences our choices, even if the options are objectively the same.
Right. And he also talks about Bernoulli's error.
Which is?
It's this idea that people tend to evaluate outcomes based on changes in their wealth rather than their final asset position. Essentially, we're more sensitive to losses than to gains.
That makes sense.
It does. And these insights, along with those of his collaborator Amos Tversky, completely changed our understanding of how people make decisions in real-world situations.
Where things aren't always black and white and emotions play a big role.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that we're not always as logical and rational as we think we are. Okay, let's delve into the molecular world once again with NBL 386.pdf. Hugo Thierl's lecture on oxidation enzymes.
Thirl's work was crucial for understanding how these enzymes work. They catalyze oxidation reduction reactions.
And those reactions involve the transfer of electrons.
You got it.
Okay, so what were some of his key findings?
He highlighted the importance of James B. Sumner's work. Sumner was the first to crystallize an enzyme,
And that enzyme was?
urease. It was groundbreaking at the time. Many scientists believed enzymes were just too complex to isolate in pure form.
So Thirl picked up where Sumner left off.
He did. His research focused on the kinetics of enzyme reactions, how fast these reactions occur and the factors that affect those rates. He really delved into the intricate workings of these molecular machines.
And he specifically studied cytochrome C, an iron-containing protein involved in electron transport. He found that it couldn't react directly with molecular oxygen, suggesting that other players must be involved.
Yes. His work helped to piece together that complex puzzle of cellular respiration, that process where cells convert nutrients into energy. It's an intricate network of enzymes and electron carriers all working together.
Okay, how about another deep dive into the world of antibiotics?
Sounds good to me.
NBL 387.pdf details Howard Walter Florey's work on the development of penicillin, the wonder drug that changed how we treat bacterial infections.
It's a story of incredible collaboration. Florey, along with Alexander Fleming and Ernst Chain, brought penicillin from a lab curiosity to a life-saving medication.
So it was Fleming who first discovered penicillin's antibacterial properties, right? And then Florey and Chain figured out how to produce it on a large scale.
You got it. Florey also emphasized the importance of thoroughly investigating a new antibiotic before testing it on humans.
A very important point. He wasn't just focused on penicillin, though. He was already looking ahead, searching for new antibiotics that could tackle other threats.
Like the tubercle bacillus.
The bacteria that causes tuberculosis.
Yes. Even amidst a major breakthrough, he was already thinking about the next challenge.
Florey's work is a fantastic example of the power of teamwork, scientific rigor, and a genuine commitment to improving human health.
Okay, let's journey back to organic chemistry with NBL 389.pdf and Jor Wittig's lecture on phosphine-containing ylides.
Ylides, those are fascinating molecules. They're highly reactive and can do some really interesting chemistry.
And Wittig's work revolutionized organic synthesis, didn't it?
It did. He gave chemists a powerful new tool for creating carbon bonds, the very backbone of organic molecules. He talks about an unexpected reaction. He discovered one involving fluorine in aromatic systems that led to the concept of dihydrobenzene.
Dihydrobenzene is a highly reactive intermediate. Think of it as a very short-lived molecule that can be used as a building block to create more complex structures.
Okay.
Wittig also introduces this really cool concept called the Unveiling principle.
Unveiling, what does that mean?
It essentially means reversing the polarity of a molecule, making a negatively charged part positive, or vice versa.
So you're tricking the molecule into reacting in new and unexpected ways.
Precisely.
Fascinating. And thanks to his discoveries, especially the Wittig reaction, chemists can create countless new molecules with a huge range of applications. From pharmaceuticals to new materials, the impact is vast.
Absolutely.
Okay, one final shift in gears for this part of our exploration. Let's dive into Bertil Ohlon's work on international trade, as detailed in NBL 390.pdf.
Ohlon's work really challenged traditional views of trade between nations.
How so?
He emphasized the importance of differences in what he called factor endowments.
Which means?
The relative abundance of resources in different countries, like capital, labor, and natural resources. He argued that these differences drive trade patterns.
So a country with abundant natural resources might specialize in exporting raw materials, while a country with a highly skilled workforce might focus on exporting manufactured goods.
Exactly. Ohlon's work, along with the contributions of Eli Heckscher, led to what we now call the Heckscher-Ohlon model. It's a fundamental concept in international trade theory.
And his work also delved into the challenges of managing things like inflation and unemployment in economies that are open to international trade.
Very complex issues, and issues that are just as relevant today as they were back then, especially in our increasingly globalized world.
Okay, ready for another journey into the subatomic world?
Always.
NBL 392.pdf takes us back to the building blocks of matter with James Chadwick's discovery of the neutron.
It's another revolutionary discovery. Before Chadwick, the structure of the atom was still a bit of a mystery. We knew about protons and electrons, but something was missing.
And that something was the neutron.
Yes. Chadwick's experiments involved bombarding beryllium with alpha particles and observing the emission of neutral radiation. This radiation was the neutron. It had no charge and a mass slightly greater than that of the proton.
That discovery completed the basic picture of the atom, didn't it?
It did. And it paved the way for the development of nuclear physics and eventually the harnessing of nuclear energy.
It's amazing how one missing piece can have such profound implications. Okay, let's delve into the world of symmetry laws in physics with NBL 393.pdf, Chen-Ning Yang's lecture.
Yang, along with his colleague Sungdao Li, challenged a long-held assumption in physics, the principle of parity conservation.
What does parity conservation mean?
It's the idea that the laws of physics should be the same whether we're looking at a system directly or in a mirror image.
Okay, I can see the logic in that.
It seems intuitive, right?
It does.
But Yang and Li found that in certain situations, this symmetry breaks down. Yes. They discovered that parity is not always conserved, particularly in weak interactions, those forces responsible for radioactive decay. It was a shocking discovery that shook the foundations of physics.
Wow. It forced physicists to rethink those fundamental symmetry principles they had taken for granted.
It did.
Okay, time for another dive into those.
Molecular building blocks of life.
In NBL 395.pdf, Alexander R. Todd talks about synthesizing nucleotides, the fundamental units of DNA and RNA.
Todd's work was absolutely crucial in deciphering the structure of nucleotides and figuring out how to create them in the lab. His research laid the groundwork for so much of what we know about genetics and molecular biology today.
He focused on developing new methods for creating those pyrophosphate linkages that hold nucleotides together in those long chains. And he did this without needing protecting groups, which were often used to prevent unwanted side reactions.
It was a major advance in synthetic chemistry. By simplifying the process, he made it much easier to create these complex molecules in a controlled way.
That paved the way for eventually synthesizing DNA and RNA, opening up a whole new world of possibilities for understanding and manipulating genetic information.
Absolutely. Todd's work was fundamental in establishing molecular biology as a distinct field of study.
Okay, let's explore Isidore Isaac Rabi's research on measuring the proton's magnetic moment, detailed in NBL 396.pdf.
This is where physics gets really precise. Rabi's work led to the development of nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, a technique used in chemistry, physics, and medicine.
He describes his elaborate experimental setup using beams of molecules and carefully calibrated magnetic fields. It sounds incredibly intricate.
It was. Rabi had to overcome some serious technical hurdles, like generating radio frequency power at very high frequencies to make those precise measurements.
So what did he find?
He was able to accurately measure the proton's magnetic moment, which was a significant achievement in itself. But his work went far beyond that. It laid the foundation for NMR spectroscopy, a technique that has revolutionized how we study molecules.
We can use it to analyze chemical compounds?
Yes.
And even create detailed images of the human body, right?
Exactly. It's incredible how something that seems so abstract, measuring the magnetic properties of a tiny particle, can have such far-reaching practical applications.
It's mind-boggling. Okay, ready for our final deep dive.
I'm ready.
NBL 397.pdf takes us back to the fundamentals with Johannes Dietrich van der Waals' work on an equation of state for gases and liquids.
This is where we move from the ideal world to the real world.
Exactly. The ideal gas law works well under certain conditions, but van der Waals wanted an equation that reflected how real gases and liquids behave, especially when things get crowded and those molecules start interacting more strongly.
He introduced corrections to account for the volume occupied by gas molecules and the attractive forces between them. It was a major step forward.
And this equation is still widely used today. It's a testament to van der Waals' insights into the behavior of matter.
Definitely.
He also had this concept of pseudo-association, where molecules can clump together even if they're not forming strong chemical bonds.
Yes. It's a reminder that those intermolecular forces, those weaker attractions between molecules, can have a big impact on how substances behave.
Okay, let's wrap up our exploration with George H. Whipple's lecture, NBL 398.pdf. He focuses on how diet, specifically iron intake, affects hemoglobin regeneration, the process of replenishing that vital oxygen-carrying protein in our red blood cells.
Whipple's research was groundbreaking. It really changed our understanding of anemia and how to prevent and treat it.
His path to this discovery was quite interesting, wasn't it? He started by studying liver regeneration in dogs after they'd been anesthetized with chloroform.
It's a great example of how scientific curiosity can lead to unexpected breakthroughs. He was initially focused on the liver's ability to repair itself.
But his careful observations led him to a whole new area of research, the link between diet and blood health.
It's a good reminder to always be observant and follow the evidence wherever it leads.
So what did his experiments show?
He found that feeding anemic dogs' liver, and to a lesser extent other organ meats, had this incredible effect on boosting their hemoglobin production.
So a simple dietary change can have a huge impact on health.
That's what his research showed. And that discovery led to new dietary therapies for anemia that are still used today.
Wow. From studying liver regeneration to revolutionizing the treatment of anemia, all because of careful observation and a healthy dose of scientific curiosity.
Exactly.
This has been an incredible deep dive into a wealth of Nobel lectures. We've explored so much: the tiniest particles of matter, the complex workings of cells, the human mind, the global economy. It's been quite a journey.
It has been an intellectual feast, and it's been fascinating to see how these brilliant minds approach their research, challenged assumptions, and ultimately changed our understanding of the world.
I think what's most inspiring is that recurring theme of challenging existing paradigms. So many of these discoveries came from questioning the obvious, pursuing those unexpected observations, and refusing to be limited by conventional wisdom.
These Nobel laureates were true pioneers, pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and their stories are a reminder that science is a constantly evolving process.
It makes you wonder what scientific truths that we accept today might be overturned in the years to come, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And it highlights the importance of staying curious, keeping an open mind, and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these lectures with you. Thank you for sharing your insights and for guiding us through this fascinating world of scientific discovery.
The pleasure has been all mine. And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and that it sparked your own curiosity about the world around us. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning.
Okay, so NBL 398.pdf, this last one, focuses on something I know you find fascinating: blood. George H. Whipple's lecture is all about how what we eat impacts our red blood cells.
It's amazing how something as simple as diet might have such a profound effect on our health, isn't it? Whipple's research really highlighted that connection.
He was specifically interested in hemoglobin regeneration.
Right, that process of replenishing the protein that carries oxygen throughout our bodies, and iron plays a key role in that.
His journey to this discovery was a bit roundabout, though, wasn't it? I mean, he started by looking at how dog livers regenerate after being exposed to chloroform anesthesia.
Ah, yes. The unexpected twists and turns of scientific research. He was initially fascinated by the liver's capacity for self-repair, but his careful observations led him down a different path.
It's almost like those dogs were nudging him towards a different kind of breakthrough. So what exactly did his experiments reveal?
Well, he discovered that feeding anemic dogs' liver, and to a lesser extent other organ meats, was incredibly effective at boosting their hemoglobin levels. It was like a magic bullet for anemia.
So a simple dietary change can make a huge difference. And it all stemmed from studying the effects of chloroform on dog livers. It makes you wonder how many other connections are waiting to be discovered, right?
Absolutely. Science is full of surprises, and sometimes the most groundbreaking discoveries come from the most unexpected places. It just goes to show the importance of following your curiosity and being open to those serendipitous moments.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored everything from those tiny building blocks of matter to the intricate workings of the human body and the vast complexities of the global economy.
It's been a real intellectual adventure, hasn't it?
It has. Each lecture has given us a glimpse into the minds of some of the greatest scientific and economic thinkers of the past century. What strikes me most is how many of them challenged existing paradigms.
You're absolutely right. They questioned the obvious, followed those intriguing but seemingly insignificant observations, and weren't afraid to go against the grain.
They weren't afraid to be wrong. It's inspiring. It makes you wonder what scientific truths that we take for granted today will be overturned in the future. What seemingly unrelated fields might hold the key to unlocking even more groundbreaking discoveries? What awaits us just around the corner?
Those are great questions to ponder, and I think they highlight the beauty of science. It's not a static body of knowledge. It's a constantly evolving journey of discovery, and we all have the potential to be a part of that journey.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these lectures with you. Thank you for being such a fantastic guide through this incredible world of scientific exploration.
The pleasure has been all mine. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. Keep asking questions, stay curious, and never stop exploring.